so much for joining me today. If your spouse is currently in Canada, either on a visitor visa, work permit, study permit, and you wish to never separate from them again, you do have the possibility to sponsor them to Canada. There are many Canadian citizens and permanent residents in Canada that have foreign national spouses that they would like to sponsor to permanently stay in Canada. In order to sponsor your spouse to Canada, the process would be called an inland spousal sponsorship. Therefore, in this video I will explain who is eligible to sponsor their spouse to Canada, what an inland spousal sponsorship entails, and much more. Before you can sponsor your spouse to Canada, it is very important to find out whether you are eligible to sponsor your spouse in the first place. It is essential that you meet all of the eligibility requirements and conditions prior to applying for an inland spousal sponsorship. In order to be eligible to sponsor your spouse to Canada, you must be a Canadian citizen, a permanent resident of Canada, or a registered Indian. Be at least 18 years of age. You must reside within Canada, and you must prove that you have sufficient funds to provide the basic necessities for your spouse and any of their dependents. Additionally, if you are a Canadian citizen that is currently living outside of Canada, you must indicate an intention of living within Canada with your spouse once they gain permanent residency. On the other hand, if you are a permanent resident that is currently living outside of Canada, unfortunately you would not be able to sponsor your spouse. In other words, if you are a permanent resident, you must live within Canada in order to sponsor your spouse. Furthermore, the inland spousal sponsorship is intended for sponsored spouses that currently have authorized status within Canada. As previously mentioned, authorized status can be a visitor visa, a work permit, a study permit, or any of those that pretty much authorize the sponsored spouse to remain and stay in Canada. It is important to remember that any immigration application is entirely in the hands of the immigration officer, and the decision is up to them whether the sponsored spouse can stay in Canada. This would be the case if the spousal sponsorship application is refused and their authorized status, so for example a work permit, expires. If that is the case, then they would have to leave Canada. An advantage of the inland spousal sponsorship is that the sponsored spouse can actually apply for an open work permit while the application is being processed. By applying for an open work permit while the spousal sponsorship application is being processed, the sponsored spouse actually has the ability to work and provide for their family while the application is being processed. Additionally, the sponsored spouse can actually work for any Canadian employer anywhere in Canada. Essentially, by obtaining an open work permit, they do not have to have a valid job offer prior to applying for the work permit. If the sponsored spouse is requested to attend an interview for the spousal sponsorship application, the Government of Canada will inform them of the date, time, and location of the interview and any documentation that they may need. Furthermore, a disadvantage of the inland spousal sponsorship is that while the application is being processed, the sponsored spouse won't be able to really travel outside of Canada. If they do, the discretion is up to the immigration officer whether they allow them to return to Canada. This is especially the case if the visitor visa or work permit or study permit expires while they are outside of Canada. Conclusively, the processing times for inland spousal sponsorships have actually become the same for both inland and overseas spousal sponsorships, and they are now calculated at around 12 months, which is 1 year. It is very important that you take all of the aforementioned information into consideration prior to applying for an inland spousal sponsorship. Here at Akrami & Associates, we have worked and dealt with many different immigration matters, and we have helped many of our clients reunite with their spouses in Canada permanently. If you feel like you may be eligible to apply for an inland spousal sponsorship, please feel free to contact us. With Akrami & Associates, there's always a way.